Alright, the NBA season starts in 3 months, and should be an exciting season. And if you're wondering who's going to win it, it's pretty obvious, but there's a lot of doubters. And I get it, you hate Kevin Durant, you hate Devin Booker, you hate super teams. Let me tell you something, this is not a super team. A super team is two superstars and another all-star. This is two superstars and another guy who's not quite an all-star level or hasn't been in a couple years. So, and if we are a super team, then how come we aren't the clear favorites? Because clearly we aren't. And so, stop comparing us to the KD Warriors or the Garnett Celtics or the LeBron Heat. We're not on that level yet, okay? It was by far the most productive offseason, and we by far won the offseason. So let me tell you the thing we did. We traded Chris Paul, Laundry Shamet, and a bunch of picks for Bradley Beal and Jordan Goodwin. And at first people were confused by this because why would we do this? This is not what we need. But it's Bradley Beal, and we're barely giving up anything. Paul is not reliable in the playoffs. He always gets injured or he always chokes. And speaking of Chris Paul getting injured, he was injured for 2 games or 4 games against the Nuggets, and we won 2 games against the Nuggets without Chris Paul. So if you want to think about, we basically swapped Shamet for Bradley Beal. That's crazy, right? So when we took 2 games off the Nuggets without Chris Paul, that showed that we did not need a primary ball handler to win. Because one of the complaints is that we don't have a true point guard or playmaker, but why do you need a primary ball handler when you have 3 secondary ball handlers? I understand that this team is built different, but that doesn't make them worse. So after the Beal trade, the draft starts, and with the 52nd overall pick, we take Tsunami Kamara. We love the draft. This guy was dropping double-doubles in the summer league, so we signed him for 4 years. And then the free agency starts, and the first day of free agency, Suns go crazy. They get Diop, they get, who else did we get? Eubanks, Metu, it was a productive free agency. So people thought we just weren't going to have a bench or we weren't going to be that deep. But right now we have 14 playable guys. So a couple things happened last week. We signed Bobo and we traded Cameron Payne. We basically salary dumped him. And people were wondering why, and it was probably the most questionable move we made this offseason. But let me tell you why. Because Jordan Goodwin is a steal from the Bradley Beal trade. Jordan Goodwin is our backup point guard, and if you're going to laugh at it, you haven't even seen him play yet. So if we really think Jordan Goodwin is our backup point guard, then that means Cameron Payne is either going to be unhappy with this role or he's just not going to have a role. And I'm not going to pay $6.5 million for a guy who's not going to have a role, so we got rid of him. And that's basically everything that happened this offseason. And there's still doubters despite everything we've done. And the most common complaints are lack of defense and lack of depth. But our defense and depth improved from last year slightly. So if you're going to complain about us not having defense or depth, you have to remember that it improved from last year. People were saying the same thing last year. Actually, both of those things are underrated, okay? And I don't care if you think we lack depth or if there aren't any recognizable names on our bench. I know we have a good bench. Eric Gordon and Keita Bates-Diop, they both averaged 10 points a game last year off the bench. And Bobo, despite people saying how bad he is at basketball, he averaged 9-5 last year, and he's 23 years old. We have an actual 14-man rotation. There are 14 playable players, and we're obviously throughout the season we're going to figure out who's actually good, who's actually going to be in the playoff rotation and all that. But right now we have 14 playable players, and people are still going to complain about the depth and stuff, but I don't think you should be as worried as you think you have to be. Same with our defense, because Okogie and Goodwin are some of the better perimeter defenders, and Booker and Durant are always going to be decent defenders. And DeAndre, when he's not coached by a bad coach and coached by an actual coach that can bring out his defensive abilities, DeAndre is going to be a decent defender. The DeAndre hate is actually getting pretty crazy because people are acting like this guy is not good at anything. But he had one bad playoff series, and we've seen what he can do. But when you have a bad relationship with your coach, it's hard to play well. take last year's Suns team, get a better coach, replace Shamet with Beal, get slightly better depth, and get slightly better defense. And that's the team this year. So what's the problem? We stop being in denial about how good the Suns are. So here's what's going to happen. Okay? And I don't care if you like it or not, but it's what's going to happen. The Phoenix Suns are going to go back to back, and Kevin Durant is going to be a top 10 all-time player, and Devin Booker is going to be a top 75 all-time player, because he's going to win one of the Finals MVPs. KD is going to win the one this year, but Booker 2025 Finals MVP. Okay, KD is going to start getting old, and Booker is going to start actually being the better player. And again, if you're going to talk about how bad our depth or defense is, you have to remember that both slightly improved from last year. By the way, before the Beal trade happened, what did you think we were going to have on our bench? Because before the Beal trade, we also didn't have much money. We were never going to have a great bench. Act like we were going to trade DeAndre for a few mid players and trade Chris Paul for someone, and it was just going to be Durant, Booker, and a bunch of mid players. Let me ask you something. Would you rather it be Durant, Booker, and a bunch of mid players, or Durant, Booker, Beal, Aiden, and several mid players? What other complaints do people have about the Phoenix Suns? Kevin Durant getting old? Well, you can look at his stats. Doesn't seem like he's getting old. I know he had a pretty mid playoffs, but he also did 2022 with the Brooklyn Nets. He also had a pretty mid playoffs there, and people were hating on him. And the next season, he averages 29 a game. So don't think Kevin Durant is washed yet, because he's not. So what else is wrong about this team? Are you going to stay in denial, or are you going to admit that the Phoenix Suns are going to win the finals in 2024 and 2025? Because here's the thing. The last 4 years, there has been a different NBA champion, and that's only happened like 2 other times. And so I'm pretty sure, I don't know how many times there's been a different NBA champion 5 years in a row, but there's not many. And so for there to be 6 different ones in a row, that would be crazy. That's not likely. And all of our veteran minimum guys on our bench, they have 2-year veteran minimum contracts, so they're going to stay for 2 years, and so the whole team is going to be back after 2024, and so the whole team is going to be here for 2 years, so it's possible that we can go back to back. And yeah, and then there has not been a different NBA champion 6 years in a row, so why would it happen now? That is why the Phoenix Suns are the best team in the league by far, and we'll go back to back. Thanks for watching.